Stop for a second. Breathe. Feel that? Something has changed, and even if nobody has said it out loud yet, the energy is no longer the same. The person who got used to your effort, your warmth, your late-night understanding, your constant reaching, is now standing in a silence they did not prepare for. You did not beg. You did not send another message trying to explain your heart. You did not fight for a place where you kept being half seen. You simply became still. And that stillness is doing more than all your chasing ever did. Right now, while they try to move through the day like everything is normal, something inside them keeps circling back to your absence. It is quiet, but it is powerful. It is subtle, but it is real. Stay with me, because what happens next is not random. It reveals everything. When your energy stops feeding a one-sided bond, truth rises fast. People feel the weight of what they thought would always be there. They notice what they stopped valuing. They start hearing the silence where your effort used to speak for both of you. And whether this leads to return, regret, or release, one thing becomes clear. Your withdrawal did not weaken your position. It exposed the whole connection. And once that truth begins to surface, neither of you can fully go back to pretending. Before this shift, the connection kept moving because you kept moving it. Your messages, your concern, your patience, your willingness to close every gap before it became a real distance. You were supplying the motion, the emotional oxygen, the sense of continuity. Because of that, they never had to decide much. They never had to ask themselves what they truly felt, what they truly wanted, or what they were actually willing to give. Your effort made indecision easy. It made passivity comfortable. It allowed them to remain inside the connection without fully showing up for it. And that is why your silence hits so hard now. The moment you stopped carrying the bond on your back, the imbalance had nowhere left to hide. What once felt stable now feels shaky. What once felt available now feels uncertain, and people often do not recognize value while it is constantly pouring into their hands. They recognize it when it is gone. That is the shift, not drama, not revenge. Just revelation. Watch carefully here, because this matters. When one person does all the reaching, the other person is protected from the discomfort that creates real choice. But now the comfort has been removed. Now they have to face the empty space your effort used to fill. Now they have to meet themselves. And what they do with that moment will tell you more than any promise they ever made. Your silence has changed their attention from passive to active. That is one of the deepest parts of this whole process. Before, they could receive your care without examining it. They could enjoy your presence without fearing its loss. They could assume the door would stay open because you kept standing in the doorway. But now the rhythm is broken. Now something in them has been interrupted. The mind notices what disappears. The heart notices what no longer reaches for it. And in that gap, questions begin. They replay conversations. They revisit moments they once rushed past. They wonder what changed, even if the answer is simple. You finally chose your peace over the old pattern. This is where people often panic and think they need to break the silence to stay important. But no, the silence is already speaking. It is telling the truth that words kept delaying. It is showing whether they miss you or just miss being comforted by your effort. It is revealing whether they feel love or merely the loss of convenience. Stay with this, because most people leave too early and never see what silence uncovers. When you stop reaching, the connection can no longer hide behind routine. It must either deepen through honest effort or collapse under the weight of what it truly was. That is why stillness feels so sharp. It does not create the truth. It reveals it. There is also something happening inside them that may not look dramatic from the outside, but it is deeply unsettling within. Their first response is often confusion, not clear regret, not instant wisdom. Confusion. They are trying to understand why the energy feels different. They were used to a version of reality where your care kept flowing toward them with little interruption. That flow became background noise. It became normal, and people rarely study what feels guaranteed. But once that guarantee disappears, the nervous system reacts. Curiosity grows, anxiety flickers underneath ordinary moments. They may check their phone more than usual. They may revisit your words in their mind. They may try to act unaffected while silently wondering why your absence feels heavier than they expected. This is where character starts to speak. A mature person does not run from that discomfort. A mature person becomes honest. They ask what role they played. They ask what they ignored. They ask whether they mistook your loyalty for something that required no response. But someone who is not ready may do the opposite. They may protect their pride. They may act colder. They may wait for you to return to your old pattern so they never have to change their own. And listen carefully. Their reaction is information. Their response to your absence is not a side detail. It is one of the clearest answers you will ever receive about their depth, their readiness, and their actual capacity for real love. If their feelings are real, your silence will not erase them. It will sharpen them. Without your constant effort holding the connection up, they are forced to feel what remains when you are no longer guiding every emotional beat. That matters, because sometimes what looked like deep feeling was partly being kept alive by your presence, your attention, your steady emotional supply. Once that support is removed, the truth has room to breathe. If their feelings have substance, they begin to feel your absence in a more personal way. Not as a missing habit, not as a broken routine, but as the loss of someone specific, someone who brought warmth, depth, softness, understanding, someone whose presence quietly shaped their emotional world more than they admitted. But if the feeling was shallow, that truth rises too, and painful as that may sound, it is still a gift, because a hard truth can free you faster than a comforting illusion ever will. This is why silence is not empty. It is diagnostic. It shows what cannot survive without your effort. It shows what only existed because you kept breathing life into it. And yes, that can hurt, but it can also heal, because once you know what is real, you stop wasting years trying to turn uncertainty into devotion. You stop calling confusion a connection. You stop naming imbalance as fate. And that is when your heart begins to return to itself. What many people miss is that your stillness is not only working on them, it is working on you. In fact, some of the deepest change is happening within your own inner world. Every time you resist the urge to reach out just to calm the ache, you build something. Every time you let the silence stay without rushing to fix it, you strengthen something. The energy that used to pour outward now begins to return home. And when that energy comes back, it starts repairing places in you that became tired, stretched, and emotionally overused. Your discernment gets clearer. Your emotions get less chaotic. Your thoughts slow down enough for truth to become audible. You start noticing how much of your exhaustion came from trying to hold together what was never yours to carry alone. This is the hidden blessing in the pause. It gives your soul room. It gives your body relief. It gives your spirit a chance to hear what constant striving kept drowning out. And here is the powerful part. As you become calmer, they often become more aware. As you become less reactive, the connection reveals more. As you stop trying to control the outcome, you begin to see the structure of the whole situation with new eyes. Don't skip over that, because this is where self-respect stops being a concept and starts becoming a lived reality. Not loud, not performative, just solid, just rooted, just true. There are moments in this process when fear will try to pull you backward. It will whisper that if you do not act now, you will lose everything. It will tell you that silence means rejection, that waiting means weakness, that stillness is dangerous. But fear is loud because it is familiar, not because it is right. That is one of the biggest lessons hidden inside this season. Intensity is not guidance. Panic is not wisdom. The urge to rush is not always a sign that something important is slipping away. Sometimes it is simply the old pattern demanding to be fed again. And if you are not careful, you will mistake activation for truth. You will mistake discomfort for emergency. You will mistake longing for instruction. This is why you must slow down. Watch your own mind. Notice how quickly it wants to fill the silence with stories. Maybe they forgot you. Maybe they never cared. Maybe it is already over. Maybe you should send one message just to see. But not every thought deserves obedience. Not every feeling deserves action. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Let that sink in. Because the person you are becoming in this season is someone who can feel deeply without collapsing into reaction, someone who can care without abandoning self-respect, someone who can face uncertainty without turning it into self-betrayal. That is not loss, that is growth in its strongest form. And while you are learning not to chase, something even deeper is being untangled. You are not just stepping away from one person. You are stepping away from the pattern that made over-giving feel necessary. You are confronting the belief that love must be earned through emotional overextension. You are exposing the habit of abandoning yourself just to keep a connection alive. This is why the season can feel strange. You are no longer fully inside the old cycle, but you may not yet feel fully settled in the new one either. It can feel empty at first. It can feel like suspension, but it is not emptiness. It is transition. It is the slow rebuilding of your inner structure. The part of you that once equated uncertainty with danger is being retrained. The part of you that looked for validation to feel safe is being weakened. The part of you that confused being chosen with being whole is being corrected. And that work is sacred, even when it feels uncomfortable. Keep listening here because this changes everything. When you stop trying to secure love through urgency, you begin to discover whether love can stand on truth. When you stop forcing closeness, you learn whether closeness was ever mutual. And when you stop negotiating your own boundaries for temporary comfort, you create space for a more stable kind of peace. Not the peace of getting what you want instantly, the peace of no longer being ruled by desperation. Loneliness plays a big role here, and it needs to be understood clearly. Loneliness is not always about missing a person. Often, it is the feeling that rises when no one outside you is temporarily soothing what still feels unsettled inside. That is why silence can feel so loud. It brings you face to face with your own nervous system, with your own unhealed expectations, with your own fear of not being chosen right now, and that can create a powerful temptation to go backward, not because the connection is right, but because contact would bring brief relief. This is where many people confuse comfort with alignment. They think that if reaching out would reduce the pain, then reaching out must be the answer. But relief is not always the same as healing. Sometimes relief only restarts the cycle. Sometimes the message you want to send is not coming from wisdom at all. It is coming from the discomfort of sitting with yourself without distraction. And yet, that exact discomfort can become the doorway to transformation if you let it do its work. If you stay, if you breathe, if you refuse to convert every ache into action. Because when discomfort is endured without panic, new capacity is built. The body learns it can survive uncertainty. The heart learns it can remain open without becoming frantic. The mind learns that not knowing is not the same as being unsafe. That is where real strength is born. Quietly, slowly, but unmistakably. As this continues, something starts shifting in your perception. The person who once felt like the center of your emotional world begins to move into a more honest position. Not because they suddenly mean nothing, but because your inner system is no longer inflating their importance to maintain a sense of security. That is a major turning point. It is where emotional freedom begins to take shape. You still care, but the care is no longer mixed with panic. You still feel, but the feeling is no longer running your life. You still remember, but the memory is no longer controlling your behavior. This is what maturity looks like in real time. It is not coldness, it is order. It is the heart putting things back in their rightful place. And once that happens, your choices change without force. You stop sending messages from fear. You stop reopening conversations that have already shown you what they are. You stop bargaining with your own boundaries in exchange for crumbs of reassurance, not because you no longer want love, but because you want a love that does not require self-erasure. Notice the difference. This is not detachment born from bitterness. It is clarity born from restoration. And clarity is powerful. It lets you see whether someone is actually moving toward you or whether you were always the one generating the movement. It lets you stop romanticizing mixed signals. It lets you stop calling delay by the name of destiny. It lets you come back to reality. And reality, while sometimes painful, is clean. Now, here is where the silence becomes a true test. not only for them, but for the entire connection. Because once your effort is removed, what happens next cannot be blamed on timing, chemistry, or confusion alone. The connection now asks something of them. Initiative, courage, honesty, emotional risk. They must decide whether what they felt was deep enough to move them into action, reflection, and growth. A person who genuinely values you will not stay comfortable forever in a distance they know they helped create. They will feel the weight of it. They will wrestle with themselves. And if they have the depth for it, they will respond with more truth than pride. But a person who only valued your availability may do nothing. They may wait. They may hide behind ego. They may hope you return to making things easy for them again. And if that happens, painful as it may be, do not miss the message. Silence does not only call people inward. It also exposes who they are when comfort is gone. This is why you must stop measuring everything by how intensely you feel and start measuring by what actually unfolds. Are they moving with sincerity or only reacting to the loss of access? Are they reaching with humility or just circling back because the silence bruised their ego? Watch the difference. One comes from depth, the other comes from disruption, and if you look closely, your peace will help you see it. Timing matters here, but not in the shallow way most people imagine. Timing is not just about when something appears, it is about whether the inner structure of the people involved can actually hold what appears. Something can arrive too early and still fail, not because it was wrong, but because the internal readiness was missing. If a connection enters a system still ruled by fear, it will be filtered through fear. If it enters a heart still addicted to external validation, it will become another source of instability. If it enters a person who still thinks love must be chased, earned, or managed through overgiving, the bond will bend under the pressure of those old patterns. So what feels like delay is not always denial. Sometimes it is preparation, sometimes it is the slow reduction of internal distortion so that truth can be received cleanly. This is why the waiting season is not passive. It is active restructuring. It is the weakening of reflexes that used to drive you into old behavior. It is the retraining of perception so every silence does not become a story of rejection. It is the building of capacity. And capacity is everything. Emotional capacity means you can feel longing without turning it into desperation. Relational capacity means you can value connection without losing yourself inside it. Spiritual capacity means you can stay anchored even when the visible outcome has not arrived. These things are built in hidden seasons, and later they change everything you are able to hold. The longer the silence stretches, the more visible this inner work becomes. At first, the mind treats the silence like a problem to solve. It hunts for clues. It replays details. It searches for signs. It wants certainty. Fast. But if you do not interfere, a second stage begins. The silence stops feeling only like absence and starts becoming a space where deep processes unfold. Your body learns that uncertainty can exist without catastrophe. Your mind learns that not every gap must be filled with meaning. Your heart learns that peace does not have to wait for immediate answers. This is one of the most powerful forms of healing because it is not just mental, it is physical. Your nervous system begins to experience stillness without collapse. That means new strength is being formed in places words alone could never reach. And once this strength is built, your life changes. You stop treating every emotional wave as a command. You stop chasing closure from people who only offered confusion. You stop believing that immediate contact is the same thing as real connection. Stay here, because this part matters. The peace you are building now will not only affect this one situation, it will shape every future relationship, every future decision, every future moment when fear tries to rush you out of your center. What you are learning in this silence is how to remain whole even when something important is unresolved. That is rare, and it is powerful. Eventually, one of two things becomes undeniable. Either the person rises to meet the truth your silence revealed, or the connection quietly falls apart under the weight of its own imbalance. If they rise, it will not just be through words, it will be through changed energy, clear intention, and a willingness to carry what they once left you to carry alone. If they do not rise, then the silence has still done holy work. It has saved you from spending more of your life inside an arrangement that depended on your overextension to survive. It has protected your future from being built on a false foundation, and that matters more than temporary comfort ever could. Because what leaves when you stop performing for it was never as secure as it looked. What disappears when you become still was never rooted deeply enough to stay. That is not punishment. That is protection. That is clarity. That is mercy in a form that does not always feel soft at first. And if a door closes because you finally stopped forcing it open, that does not mean you failed. It may mean you finally agreed to reality. It may mean life is no longer allowing you to build around imbalance. It may mean you are being moved towards something steadier, cleaner, and far more mutual. Don't rush past that thought. Sometimes the ending of pursuit is the beginning of alignment. Sometimes what feels like losing access is actually gaining truth. And if they do come back, that too must be viewed with clear eyes. Not every return is transformation. Not every message is maturity. Not every moment of renewed attention means they have truly changed. This is where your new strength becomes essential. You must look past the relief of being noticed again and ask deeper questions. Has their awareness become action? Has their regret become responsibility? Has their interest become consistency? Anyone can miss what was once easy to access. Anyone can circle back when silence creates discomfort. But real change shows itself through steadiness, humility, and the willingness to build differently. And if that is not there, then the return is only another test of whether you will abandon yourself for a familiar feeling. Watch this closely, because the old version of you might have accepted almost any sign as proof. The new version of you requires substance. The new version of you understands that attention and intention are not the same. That longing and readiness are not the same. That being contacted and being valued are not the same. This is where your healed discernment protects you. It keeps you from confusing movement with meaning. It keeps you from re-entering a cycle just because the silence finally produced a reaction. Reactions are easy. Real rebuilding is rare. So if they return, let truth stay in the room. Let your peace remain louder than your hope. Let the changed version of you be the one that answers. At the deepest level, this whole journey is not only about what they do next. It is about who you become while the answer unfolds. You are becoming someone who no longer needs to chase to feel worthy. Someone who can love without pleading. Someone who can wait without collapsing. Someone who can stand inside uncertainty and still remain rooted. That is no small change. That is transformation at the level of identity. The version of you that once believed love had to be secured through urgency is fading. The version of you that knows peace can exist before the outcome arrives is being formed. And when that formation is complete, what enters your life will not feel like chaos. It will feel like coherence. It will fit the structure that has been quietly built inside you. It will not have to be forced. It will not demand that you betray yourself to keep it alive. It will meet you in a place of greater order, greater calm, greater truth. And one day, this season that once felt like silence, distance, and unbearable waiting will make sense in a way that words cannot fully capture. You will see that what looked like delay was also design. What looked like emptiness was also preparation. What felt like loss was also release. And what felt like the end of your effort was the beginning of your freedom. So stay still. Stay clear, stay honest. Let the silence finish what your chasing never could, because what happens next will reveal them, but it will also reveal you.